this is Kim Speedy from 10 Sigma. Welcome to episode 125 of Transition Tuesday. Today I'm going to talk about outside agencies. Right now I'm going to switch over to a short slide presentation to share this information. Including outside agencies in the transition process. Transition Tuesday, episode 125. Before we get started with discussing including outside agencies in the transition process, let's recap the past episodes in building a successful transition program. In episode 111, we discussed the first thing needed to building a successful transition program is to make transition a priority by scheduling time for transition. Next, in episode 113, we discussed student responsibilities and how to get them to take ownership in their transition process. Then, in episode 115, we looked at many ways of collecting transition data. In episode 117, we discussed what students need to learn or do in order to take the lead in writing their postsecondary goals. In episode 119, we discussed how to write a compliant and comprehensive present level of academic achievement and functional performance. In episode 121, we went over transition annual goals. And in episode 123, we looked at determining transition services and courses of study. The next step is including outside agencies in the transition process. IDEA 2004 states, to the extent appropriate, with the consent of parents or a child who has reached the age of majority, in implementing the requirements of the Transition IEP meetings, the public agency must invite a representative of any participating agency that is likely to be responsible for providing or paying for transition services. In the next few slides, I'm going to go over some examples of forms that are used to invite an outside agency to the Transition IEP meeting. This is an example of the prior consent to invite an agency form. Again, this should be sent to the student's parents or the student if they have reached the age of majority. Along with the prior consent to invite an agency, you should also send to the parent and/or student the consent to release private data. It's a good idea to have this signed before the IEP meeting. After consent has been given, this is an example of an invitation to the IEP meeting with the agency representatives invited. Now that we have looked at the different forms required to invite outside agencies to the Transition IEP meeting, let's talk about the purpose of outside agencies, eligibility versus entitlement, and referrals and contacts. Let's go back to Transition Tuesday, episode 57, and take a look at these topics.
There are two main purposes of agency linkages. The first one is to coordinate a successful transition program for the student while they're in school in the areas of instruction, employment, community experience, related services, postsecondary training, daily living if appropriate, adult living, and functional vocational evaluation if appropriate. What this really means is that some of the students' transition services could be provided by and/or paid for by an outside agency that has been coordinated by the school district to work with the IEP team. The second major purpose of agency linkages is to facilitate the student's movement from school activities to post-school activities, so the student will continue to receive what they need as an adult to reach their post-secondary goals. These linkages are in the areas of post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, supported employment, continuing and adult education, adult services, independent living, and community participation. Let's talk a little bit about entitlement versus eligibility. This is something that's very important for the parents and the students to understand. At school age, services are based on entitlement under IDEA. The school is responsible for initiating requests for services and maintaining contact with outside agencies. At adult age, once the student leaves the school system, graduates from high school, or ages out, their services are based on eligibility, availability, and funding. Many times a student may be put on a waiting list for housing, for example, group homes. So that's why it's important at the school age that these contacts with outside agencies have been initiated so that they can be put on these waiting lists and there is no lag time while they're waiting for services. Also, at the adult age, the student and or the family is responsible for initiating requests for services and maintaining contact. For specific information on IDEA, ADA, and Section 504, please watch the Episode 19 Transition Tuesday video. There are two different ways that a school may link to an agency for a student. The first way is through referrals. The school provides information about appropriate agency services to the parent and or student for them to contact the agency, and then if possible, the school provides specific contact information. Some different ways the school could provide some information to families and students about agencies would be through transition fairs, speakers or videos, PTA meetings, newsletters, and emails. The second way the school may link to an agency is to make contact with the agency. So the school would use the student's transition services, determine the agencies that may be responsible for providing or paying for services. Then the school would need to get a consent form signed by the parents or an adult student that a representative from the agency will be invited to attend the IEP meeting. Then the school would contact the agency to invite them to the meeting, and the school would follow up to ensure agency participation in the meeting. A couple of reminders are that without consent, schools cannot commit other agencies to provide or pay for service. And usually after an agency commits verbally to services for a student, there are interagency agreements. These agreements generally talk about the population in which the agency services, the goals of the agreement, and the responsibility of the participating agency or agencies.
Here are the most important points to remember about outside agencies. The student's IEP should include any needed transition services from outside agencies, such as vocational rehabilitation, county services, and postsecondary programs. Adult agencies whose services link school experiences with employment, future education or training, and independent living opportunities should be invited to IEP transition meetings. Make sure that you write in the IEP, usually in the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, the agencies that were considered to be invited and why they were considered to help the student reach their post-secondary goals. Even if an agency was considered and not invited, this needs to be explained in the IEP. And a smooth transition to adult services is more likely to occur if representatives from adult agencies are included in the Transition IEP as early as possible. For today's bonus, I'll be sending you information and resources about outside agencies. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you use this information to help your students make a successful transition to adult life. Be sure to check your email for the bonus we just sent over. If this is the first time you've ever seen an episode of Transition Tuesday, click the link below to receive the bonus. Be sure to like and share the video and leave a comment or suggestion for a future episode of Transition Tuesday. Have a great week. See you next Tuesday.